Ransomware has now gone to pulling multiple emotional levers. One, they impact your environment, they encrypt your devices, they basically cause downtime. By the way, here's a little piece of factual data you can put in there. The average ransomware downtime right now from a ransomware incident is 24 days. So rather than saying $4.6 million, you could say, what would happen to our business if we were out of commission for 24 days? Because that's the average downtime for a ransomware attack right now. Business impact. Yes, business impact if we were out of commission for 24 days. Okay, so what's the second emotional lever that ransomware threat actors are using now? Not only have we encrypted your data, but we also stole it and we're going to make it available publicly or sell it to somebody if you don't pay. So brand and reputational damage. They are using exactly the tactics that Ashley was just talking about to force you to pay a ransom. These tactics work. It's all emotionally driven. Unfortunately, those are the powers of evil doing things there. Let's talk about how we can use some of this towards good. So stats like, hey, 24-day average time frame or downtime. There's a vendor that I typically follow. These guys they do a lot of really good work for post ransomware event kind of management, like responding to, managing, and recovering from. They're called Cubware. We'll throw a link for that in there, but they've got some great quarterly stats. That 24 days of downtime is from their latest quarterly report. So headlines. You mentioned headlines, Ashley. A lot of times seeing, hey, this healthcare company down the road who we know and we compete with just got hit by a ransomware attack. This is how bad of an impact they're taking. We need to think about what we need to do to avoid being that next headline. I've seen a number of really fast purchases of some of our security products after a precipitating either attack that occurred on a company or a failed audit. Another interesting one, and Ashley, we actually talked about this in a podcast episode we were talking about, but the GDPR, those of you who have to worry about data privacy, if you look at the top 30 GDPR payouts that occurred, most of them were abuse of things like cookies and personal information that were just negligence on the vendor's part and they weren't asking for proper permission. If you look through that list, though, there were several of them that got fined, and the fines were like 20 million plus. They got fined for not doing adequate security that led to a data breach and exposed personal information and was then an infringement of GDPR. So those are all different ways that you can talk both about impact and about risk to your business and use that as a way to, again, we're trying for that kind of emotional response. We can't just throw factual data at them. We need to tie it to that emotional response to make them, give them an urgency that, hey, something needs to be done.
And there's a kind of a lot that goes into one of the points that you just mentioned, right? The fines can range from, it's a base number per record, but it's at the discretion of the entity. In this case, I think you're referring to the EU, right? For GDPR, it's at the discretion of the entity to increase those values based off of very subjective, in many cases, very subjective situations. And this is actually where perceived value comes in. Excuse me, because if you get fined, $1 for every record and you have 10 records and you have $10, then your perceived value is obviously going to take a hit. It's always going to take a hit. If you get fined $10 for every record, and it is coming out that you weren't doing enough around your cybersecurity hygiene, and you weren't trying and putting forth what is perceived to be the minimum effort, then that's where you lose that perceived value, right? Because the perceived value is going to be your customers' expected benefit from using you as a vendor or a service or a product, minus how much it's going to cost them. So that end result of that equation is what people refer to as the perceived value. So if their expectations and the costs that they're going to pay need to be adjusted, then this is what gets you the perceived value. And perceived value seems like it's, hocus pocus math, but it's very important, because if people don't think that they should pay money for you as a vendor, then they're not going to want to. And so the amount of money that they're going to want to pay is going to be going down.